PlayStation. We got a good juicy video to talk about today. PlayStation Go multiplat, including Xbox. What's going on, you guys? Gaming Addict here, coming at you with another video. PlayStation Go multiplat. This has been a conversation for a while now. You know, we've had a lot of articles and stuff get leaked that is really pointing at PlayStation going multiplat. And look, the funny thing when it comes to all this is, for some reason, the Xbox community, a lot of them think that, you know, I'm this PlayStation channel now, all just because I disagree with the direction Xbox is leading with exclusives. I always, give them flowers when they do good stuff. I just recently made a video giving them flowers over the, the reduced in price when it comes to the Outer Worlds, but people never want to talk about that. I like the competition in the space because I feel like it leads to better opportunities for the consumer to benefit going forward, going long term. The funny thing is, like, how often do you even see a PlayStation on this desk? 9 times out of 10, if I play a game, it's either this PC, the NZXT sent me, shout out to them, or it's this Xbox, or it's this Switch. Yeah, here's a Switch 2 right here. So it's just like, my thing with it is like, stop trying to dismiss me because of your feelings when I don't even use PlayStation half the time. It's just my opinion. And the funny thing is, my opinion is their opinion. It's just different. You know, they care about the Xbox ecosystem as a whole, and I do, but I care about the hardware as well. And that's neither here or there. Maybe that's a whole video dedicated to itself. So PlayStation, in my opinion, never felt like it was something that they were going to, flirt with too much. Are they going to release stuff on other platforms? Yes. We have had multiple scenarios. What's funny is people don't realize that this has been going on for a while. PlayStation has had the opportunity to keep a lot of these games that went to PC on their platform, but they choose to let them because they value the revenue that's going to these other platforms. Now, look, I've been told by a variety of people it doesn't take an entirely amount of time to do ports. Not even a lot of money. So it's easier to get that money on the back end when it comes to that. Now, in terms of what's going on with PlayStation, is we've had a lot of scenarios that's going on here recently where, it is looking like it's pushing more and more towards the PlayStation is going multiplat, where they're going to put the God of Wars, the Uncharted, the Last of Us, the Horizon Zero Dawns, these iconic franchises that they own on the Xbox platform. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop over here. This is a job that PlayStation signed up for. And what is it to? Let's read it. PlayStation isn't just the best place to play. It's also the best place to work. Today, we're recognized as a global leader in the entertainment producing. The PlayStation family and products and services, including the PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, PlayStation VR, PlayStation Plus, and acclaimed PlayStation software titles from the PlayStation Studios and more. PlayStation also strives to create an inclusive environment to empower employees, embrace diversity. We welcome to encourage everyone who has a passion and curiosity for innovation, technology, and a place to explore our open positions to join our growing global team. The PlayStation brand falls under Sony Interactive, a wholly owned subsidiary of Sony Group Corporations. Now, if you go down here and you read somewhere in this, this overall position, you'll see right here down, it says, you still critical leadership in a role of shipping and executing the global commercial strategy for PlayStation Studios software titles across all digital platforms beyond PlayStation hardware, including Epic, Steam, Epic Game Store, Steam, Xbox, Nintendo, and mobile. Now, let's talk about this overall position. Now, to my knowledge, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe you guys put in the comment section below, this is a very well-paid job. They're paying like 200 G's plus for this position. So it's something that they're definitely putting money into. Does that really necessarily mean anything in the grand scheme of things? No, not really. But I would say that the fact that they're putting this type of salary behind this means that they're taking it serious. Now, it does say Xbox on it. So I'm very intrigued by that because normally with these kind of things, they wouldn't be very specific in terms of where it would go. It would just say, other platforms. They wouldn't use the word Xbox. So that is interesting in that. And then we got some news today. Insiders say that Sony multi-platform job listings sparked major speculation, but are reportedly related to smaller titles and live service games. Look, I'm not saying that's not wrong. There's a very good chance that's right, that they're not looking at like the bigger titles, the God of Wars, the Last of Us's, Days Gone. They're more looking towards the titles that they do work with, such as like Stellar Blade, in smaller games that they work on themselves. And that's the games that they're, bringing over in some of the live service games. And in order to make this more apparent, they did make, a publishing service of PlayStation because they need to be more efficient when they do stuff like this. They can't reach out to 505 Games if they're going to start regularly porting some of their games to other platforms. I do think that this is a little bit of cope. I think some people are coping really hardcore on this. I'm not saying that it's never a possibility that God of War and stuff are coming out, but I do think some of these PlayStation fanboys are doing everything in their power to trick their mind into thinking that releasing these games on especially Xbox isn't a possibility. God of War coming out in 2018, what damage would that realistically do to PlayStation if they put that on Xbox? Spider-Man, once again, that game came out a long time ago. What damage is that realistically going to do putting the original Spider-Man on Xbox in today's market? In my opinion, not a whole lot. It wouldn't hurt it too much. Now, the reason they would do this, obviously, is money talks. Especially Spider-Man. Spider-Man has crazy licensing deals. They do make a lot of money off of Spider-Man. But when it comes to, the consoles in general, like here, all it really matters is I don't think that they're looking to do anything drastic. I don't think that they're looking from the outside looking in. And it's like, look, we're going to start posting games day and date on other platforms. I don't think they're going to that extreme because I do feel that they still want to sell hardware. The hardware business has always been exclusives get people in the door, marketing deals get people in the door, and just, influencers who we partner with. A variety of things get people through the door. And then once they're over there, we charge them for microtransactions on games like Fortnite, Apex Legends. We charge the 30% off every game we sell, such as like a GTA 6 is probably going to make PlayStation a buku's amount of money. And they didn't really have to do anything. They have to make the game, and they get 30% off the top. So when it comes to stuff like that, that's what makes these console manufacturers money in the long form, is doing stuff like that. Look, the industry's changing, and I do think that some of PlayStation's issues when it comes to this is the way they handled games as a service. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost like $1 billion plus on trying to hardcore push to games as a service. And the reason that is just because they really tried that. They looked at that, they trend chased, because I think that's another big issue in the industry. It's not really necessarily a PlayStation issue. It's an industry wide issue where it's like these companies, they want that GTA money. These companies want that Apex Legends money. They want that Fortnite money, and none of them have those products to sell. So what they do is they greenlight a bunch of money with the concept of how much they can get from this games as a service, that games as a service. We saw a variety of games as a service that Sony canceled, from Concord to the Spider-Man game. There was a lot that they canceled. Why? Because it just wasn't working out in the back end. I get it. They're like, look, if we launch 10 titles and only 2 or 3 of them are successful, we can use those 2 or 3 to make up for all 10 of them. But it looks like all 10 of them are going to fail in the long run. They even canceled Factions. Factions was a hugely well-known franchise from the Last of Us franchise that people wanted. Multiplayer done well. And 9 times out of 10, it was canceled just because they weren't able to get, the monetization they wanted. The free-to-play model or the paid model or the games as a service model probably wasn't giving them the money that they felt would be worth, tying up Naughty Dog. People think that these games as a service are easy to make. They're not. They take the whole studio. So let's say that Factions came out and was mildly successful. Is it worth putting all of Naughty Dog on that and not let them make a Last of Us 3 or an Uncharted 5 or, a new IP in general? No, most likely you would need to build a new team entirely and let them work on it while you let the core Naughty Dog do what they do best. Look, the biggest issue I have with this going where everyone's playing nice is I do see a thing where it's like, I'm nervous about competition. We're seeing PlayStation make some very anti-consumer moves. We're seeing Nintendo make some anti-consumer moves. And I feel like if we get to this point where everyone's games just go on everything, what competition is there? Is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? Or maybe because these companies aren't being so cutthroat as much, they'll be easier on the consumer. But we've seen, especially, capitalism, these companies are looking to milk you for as much money as possible. And that's the biggest thing I'm very concerned about. Is just I don't want PlayStation going multi-plat, Xbox going multi-plat, and stuff goes down where it's just like they no longer fight for your dollar. And especially when it comes to hardware, at least PlayStation, from the illusion, looks like they're going to be at least doing timed exclusive. And all of it might be blown out of proportion. And it is just smaller titles and live services. And they're still going to keep the core of their games exclusive. I don't know. I think at this point, no one knows but the people at PlayStation. And some of them probably don't know what they're doing either. I personally believe the biggest issue they have is games as a service. I think that really hurt them a lot. Now, what does this mean for the PlayStation brand? Is exclusivity still part of PlayStation's identity? I would say to a degree it is. I don't know where their line is. Phil Spencer came out there and said they had no line. So I'm kind of curious if that's the case for that. What does it actually make for their first party studios? Is it going to be more valuable to let them work on more stuff because they are doing more multi-plat projects? I don't know. And when it comes to it, is like, if they go this direction, what happens to the hardware of PlayStation? Once again, I don't know. Like, my biggest thing is I just want a healthy ecosystem. I want a healthy gaming industry. Maybe this is old world stuff. Maybe things have just changed dramatically and this is the way we're going to see things from now on. And that's a serious possibility when it comes into the matter. But I'm just nervous on what happens if this isn't the move. What happens if this is like a giant, circuitry and then the bubble pops? Where it's like now PlayStation feels like Xbox isn't competing with them. They're going to raise their console. I mean, they just they're selling you like a $700 PlayStation 5 Pro. What happens when next gen starts? Like, there's a lot of variables that goes into this. And, as much as I'm nervous about it, I'm excited to see. What the future holds for us. So my final thoughts is none of this is bad as long as people continue the motion of where things are going. Look, I get it. Hardware doesn't sell as much as it used to be, but I don't even think that's exclusive faults. That's the biggest games in the industry are all available on past gen hardware. Why buy a PlayStation 5 or even a PlayStation 5 Pro or a Series S and X when the biggest games in the industry are available on last gen? You can still play Fortnite, Apex Legends, Minecraft. All these games still work on last gen. Call of Duty. Why switch? Now we're going to see GTA 6, probably the most consoles ever sold at that time. When Call of Duty eventually goes over, we're going to see the most consoles ever sold at that time. We've never had a generation where these games as a service soak up all the attention. And I think it's going to be interesting what we see going forward. But anyway, put in the comment section below what you guys feel about this. Very curious to hear you guys' opinion. You guys know, like I get it. People think I'm doom and gloom. I just cover the news, cover what people are talking about, engaging conversations. That's what I do. And I review things. And I talk about games. But follow me on Twitter at LordAddictIOP. You can also follow me on Addict Arena. It's where I stream. Right now, I'm streaming Wuchang. So definitely go and check that out. And until next time, this is Gaming Addict. I'm out of here. Peace. It's been a crazy week. Crazy week.